What's going on, everyone? It's Ben from YGO from Zero, and we're back with another retro Yu-Gi-Oh video, and this time I'm actually going to interrupt my coverage of treasure format to dive back into Yugi-Kaiba format, because there have been some very interesting developments that have occurred since my coverage of that format. But before we dive into exactly what those developments are, if you're not already subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing. I cover a lot of different retro formats just like Yugi-Kaiba and Critter, so if you enjoy that sort of content, please subscribe. We're trying to reach 400 subscribers by the end of January, and we're almost there. We just need like 25 more or so, because last time I checked, we're at 376 subscribers. So with your help, I'm sure we can make it there. Also, as a note, we have a Discord server now. So if you're interested in playing all these old sort of retro Yu-Gi-Oh formats, then please check it out. Link will be in the description down below. And lastly, if you enjoy this video, like always, please give it a like down below. But with all that out of the way, let's discuss this new deck that has appeared in Yugi-Kaiba. So this deck was the brainchild of a couple different duelists, mainly on the Format Library Discord. These are duelists like Jazz and Ellie Tincan, who are very, very active in the format and very, very good at the format. And they sort of came up with this like ultra control sort of deck. So basically, the idea of it is you're playing a bunch of soul exchanges with a bunch of tribute monsters, just like Soul Control. But in addition to the Summon Skulls, you're also playing Reaper of the Cards, which is basically like a Trap Master, but when combined with Soul Exchange, gives you basically additional value because you're tributing off your opponent's monsters as well. In addition, the deck is playing things like Ultimate Offering, which can allow you to bring out monsters during your opponent's battle phase, and can also allow you to dodge around Trap Hole. For instance, if you summon out something like a Login and your opponent activates Trap Hole, you can chain a face-up Ultimate Offering to it to tribute off the Login and potentially set a Reaper of the Cards or summon out a Summon Skull. There are just a lot of interesting interactions that you can do with this deck, and a lot of interesting cards that it plays. So let's dive into those more deeply. So, of course, since it's Yugi-Kaiba, we're playing the big beater of choice, 3 Login, Mystical Genie of the Lamp. This is the level 4 monster with the highest attack in the game, and is thus very good. But since we're playing a bit more of a control-y deck using Ultimate Offering, we're also playing a lot of defenders. So we're playing 3 Giant Soldier of Stone, 1 Aquamador, and we're actually playing 3 Wall of Illusions as well. This card can be a bit iffy in this format, as it allows your opponent to recycle flip monsters like Man-Eater Bug and the like, but it can be good at bouncing back tribute monsters to your opponent's hand, and in this deck in particular, I think it's good to have a way to sort of clear your opponent's field if they attack into it, then monster bounce back to their hand, and then you can get in for some major damage next turn. So I think this is a good inclusion in the deck, although maybe with more tinkering, people will just prefer this to be 2K Defenders. The deck is still, I think, in its early stages, and this was sort of just like a standard starting list that Ellie Tincan posted in Format Library Discord, so there's definitely improvements that you could make here, but I think that it's still a good inclusion in the deck. We are also playing 1 Wicked Wormbeast to sort of play against soul control decks that your opponent might be playing. This card can be very, very strong in that regard, just denying your opponent a monster on your field to soul exchange away. It can also be very good if you've already got 1 monster on board as an offensive pressure, and you want to commit more damage to board without actually committing more monsters to board to die to like a board wipe or something. And in addition, having Ultimate Offering in the deck makes it a lot more playable as well, as you can bring it out as an additional normal summon as well. The deck is also playing 3 Man-Eater Bug. Of course, this is a crazy card this format. Very, very good, and especially good to bring out off of Ultimate Offering. And it's also playing 1 Armed Ninja, which is a bit of an interesting inclusion, but it makes sense given that once your opponent realizes that you are on things like Reaper of the Cards, they may set some spell cards as bluffs as well, and Armed Ninja can hit those. In addition, if you flip up a set with Reaper and it is a spell card, you can then use Armed Ninja to clear it later. And it is a monster that can provide like tribute fodder on field if you want to hard tribute summon, something like a Summon Skull. You can set Armed Ninja at the end of your opponent's battle phase with Ultimate Offering, and then flip it up and tribute it next turn for a big tribute monster. Moving on to the spells, we of course have the Power 5 limited spells, Raigeki, Pot of Greed, Monster Reborn, Dark Hole, and Change of Heart. Change of Heart is especially good in this deck because you are playing a lot of tribute monsters, and it basically acts as a better copy of Soul Exchange, of which the deck is playing 3. With 5 tribute monsters, these cards will likely be online at some point. It can make the deck a little bit bricky, but since it's a bit of a slower deck anyways, this brickiness hopefully won't matter as much. And the deck is also playing 3 Fissure to act as even more removal. Lastly, for the spells, it's playing 2 Swords of Revealing Light because this card is insane this format. There are very few ways to remove this, and it basically acts as a draw 3 in most cases. For the traps, we're playing the Ultimate Offering, as I mentioned before, as well as 3 Trap Holes, one of the best traps in the format, and 3 Waboku. We are not playing 3 Reinforcements in the main deck, as the deck is a bit more defensive, so Reinforcements won't really matter as much. But we are actually playing Reinforcements in the side if we want to go into a bit more of an aggressive strategy with things like Battle Ox. Speaking of the side, we're also playing 3 Trap Master. If our opponent's on an Ultimate Offering based strategy, this can be good to bring in. We're also playing 1 Card Destruction in case they're on Exodia. And we're playing 3 D-Spell in case we want to have more spell sniping ability. Given that in games 2 and 3, they may be setting more spells. These D-Spells can be good to bring in for that reason. It can also be good against stall decks that are playing things like Swords of Revealing Light. And lastly, we're playing 2 Just Desserts. This is largely to punish stall decks that are setting a bunch of monsters on their field, but it can also be good at just getting a last bit of damage out of nowhere for decks that aren't expecting it. So that's sort of like an initial build of this deck that you can experiment with if you're interested in it. And I definitely think there are places where you can change it. I mean, I myself am probably going to make some changes on this deck for if I play it in the future as well. But I think this is a very good place to start. And to show you what I mean by that, let's show off this deck in action a bit to hopefully show you why this deck is so powerful. Okay, we've got a game against Amp Allen TCG, who's a very good duelist in the format. We, of course, are playing the sort of Ultimate Offering control deck. Unclear what they're playing right now, but I guess we'll have to get into the game to find out. So we are going to have a bit of an intense rock, paper, scissors here. Seems like we're on pretty much the same wavelength in terms of rock, paper, scissors, but we do actually manage to win the RPS, so we will be able to go first here. This is a decent hand. Ultimate Offering in the opener is very nice, as that is a very powerful card. But we're just going to start by summoning out Login, setting Ultimate Offering, setting Fissure, and passing back to them. We could have potentially just held the Login in hand to play around Fissure, and we can sort of play around Trap Hole a little bit because we do have the Ultimate Offering. But in order to play around Trap Hole with the Ultimate Offering next turn, we'd have to either summon out both Logins or tribute over our Login with Reaper of the Cards. And I wasn't really willing to do that, so I figure, if they've got Fissure, they can use it up. And we've got another Login in hand for next turn. But if they don't, then I think this is a pretty good start. And also, this way, if they do have a way to get offensive, they'll have a bit of a hard time getting over the Login. So they're going to start out with a Pot of Greed. Very good opening draw there. And they're going to start out with a Swords and setting 2 and passing back to us. So it seems like they don't really have the best start here. We're just going to set a Fissure and pass back to them. In this format, there's not really much spell and trap removal, so you can generally feel more comfortable just setting spells as bluffs. And so we do. They're just going to set 1, pass back to us. That's very likely a Man-Eater bug, as, there isn't really much else you'd set here. It could be a bluff, but we have the read that it's Man-Eater bug, and we're just going to pass, because even if it is Man-Eater bug, we do have the Ultimate Offering to bring out a monster during their battle phase to make it not as bad. They're going to bring out a Neo here and flip up the Man-Eater bug, popping our Login, trying to get in for some damage. We do have Ultimate Offering for that, though, so we will pay 5, and we're just going to summon out Login and attack. If they've got a Trap Hole for this, we can always chain Ultimate Offering and just tribute set our Reaper. It looks like they do have Trap Hole, so we are just going to chain the Ultimate Offering, tribute set out the Reaper, and it looks like they're not going to attack into it. They're just going to set another and pass back to us. We draw another Reaper, which isn't the best, honestly, as we are probably just going to set Wall of Illusion in the battle phase if they do clear our set, but we feel pretty okay about this anyways. There aren't many ways to deal with a face-down set monster that your opponent has in Yugi-Kaiba format. Change of Heart would, of course, be brutal, as they could just Change of Heart our Reaper, get over the Ultimate Offering that way, and get in for a ton of damage. But other than that, it's just like Raigeki. So looks like they're just going to try attacking in here, and they will flip up Reaper. We're going to target that back row there, and it is a Waboku, which they will not be able to chain, as this does happen in the damage step. So they're just going to switch the Man-Eater Bug to defense, set 1, pass back to us. We draw a Trap Hole, which is pretty nice. Now we can afford to probably get a bit more aggressive here. We're going to switch the Reaper to attack over that Man-Eater Bug, and then Fisher the Neo in main phase 2. We've got Trap Hole to deal with whatever else they might bring out next turn. And it looks like they're just going to set 1, so we don't really have to worry about that. We draw a Waboku. We're just going to Soul Exchange that Giant Soldier, because we can't really attack anyways, and if they do have a board clear, I'm honestly fine with them just clearing these Reapers. We've got a Wall of Illusion plus Ultimate Offering, and we just drew Waboku, so we do have ways to get defensive here. They will indeed board clear here, so they'll Dark Hole our entire board away, summon out a Login, which will be fine by us. They're going to attack in. We are just going to Ultimate Offering, setting the wall here, and that will bounce the Login back to hand. Unfortunately, they do have a Reinforcements there, so, you know, they will be able to clear our wall, but if we draw another monster, we'll be doing pretty decently. Summon Skull isn't the best monster we could have drawn here, honestly, but it's good for later, I guess, hopefully. We've got the Trap Hole for the Login, so we will be able to clear the Login that way, and they're just going to set 1 and pass, so we're feeling pretty good about that. Man-Eater Bug is a great draw. We can just bring that out off of an Ultimate Offering in their battle phase, and they're just going to set and pass back to us. That's perfectly fine by us. We can afford just to bide our time, not commit to board, because we've got a lot of monsters to bring out. We draw Swords, and we could activate it, and I guess we will. I guess because we've also got Fisher, but I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. I think we could have potentially saved the Swords for later. But we activated it, and they're just going to set another pass back to us. And actually, we do have a pretty sick play here. We can actually flip up the Man-Eater Bug and target their set, and then chain Ultimate Offering to the Man-Eater Bug to activation to tribute over it to bring out a Summon Skull in a way that dodges around Trap Hole. We can then hopefully clear the Giant Soldier with the Skull. If they've got Waboku, it won't go through, but it looks like they don't. And we've got a pretty powerful monster on board. Of course, they probably have removal for it, but it looks like they're just going to set 1 and pass. We're feeling pretty good about that. We'll attack into it. It likely is a bug, and it is a bug. So they will be able to pop our Summon Skull, but I'm still feeling pretty good about our board state here. They've got a Swords of their own, which is kind of unfortunate for us, but we've got plenty of ways to go on the defensive here if they do try and make an offensive push. They're going to summon out a Neo, and they're just going to go to battle, attack in. We're going to pay 5, and we're going to set the Giant Soldier here. And they will use up a Reinforcements on that. Honestly, we're not too torn up about that, since we have many ways to deal with this Neo. We're just going to Fisher it away, and then just set another Fisher, pass back to them. I think we could have actually set the Dark Hole instead of the Fisher, as if they are playing card destruction by some chance, which some decks actually are, then it would have been safer to have the Dark Hole on field. But I guess some decks are also playing D-Spell, so we're playing around that a little bit. But we just draw a Wall of Illusion, and they're going to bring out another Neo, and they're just going to try attacking in here. I think we're fine just setting the wall and then bouncing that back to hand. They're going to take 150, Neo will bounce back, and then we can get in for something like a Wicked Worm Beast here. So we're going to bring out Wicked Worm Beast and just attack in. And this is what I meant by Wicked Worm Beast being nice, is that we can commit this monster to board because it will bounce back to hand at the end of our turn and just get in some flat damage. They're just going to bring out Neo. That's fine by us. And they will Fisher away our wall, but honestly, that's pretty fine. We've got Ultimate Offering to bring out the Man-Eater Bug here. So we will be able to pop that Neo. And they're just going to pass back to us. Pot of Greed's an incredible draw at this point. We don't really draw anything that good with it. They're going to try Trap Holing this, and we're actually going to let that go through. We could have Tribute summoned out the Summon Skull, chaining Ultimate Offering to it, but if they've got some form of removal, that's a bit greedy because they can just remove it. They've only used up 1 Fisher and 1 Dark Hole, so they've got plenty of removal left in their deck, so I didn't really feel the need to commit Summon Skull to board just yet. They're going to bring out a Login, and that's fine by us. They're going to attack in here. We could Waboku it because we do have an additional Waboku in hand, but I honestly don't really feel the need to. We draw a Wall of Illusion, which is pretty nice. We're just going to Fisher away the Login, though. And we're actually going to just hard set the Wall of Illusion. This is interesting. I think because they only really have Change of Heart and Raigeki, to deal with a set monster like this. We're trying to preserve our life points because we are running pretty low, and activating Ultimate Offering does cost us life points every activation. So I think this makes some sense. They're just going to pass back to us, and we feel pretty good about that. We draw Armed Ninja, which isn't the best right now, but it is a card that we could potentially use later. We're going to think about it a bit, and actually we are going to flip up the Wall of Illusion and attack in here. We do have Woboku if they do commit a monster to board to try and get over this, and it looks like they will. So they're going to attack in, and we are just going to actually Woboku that to protect our wall and bounce that back to hand. We've got an additional Woboku in hand, so we're feeling pretty good about that. We're just going to switch the wall to defense, set the Woboku, pass back to them. They're going to bring out the Battle Ox, and that's fine by us. They're going to Fisher away our wall, so they will be able to try to attack in here. We will Ultimate Offering to set an Armed Ninja. You know, we're not really setting this for the back row sniping ability. We're more setting this to prevent them from getting in damage. But we will be able to potentially snipe a spell. And if it's not a spell, at least we'll know what they're working with. Luckily, it is a spell. It's a soul exchange, which means they likely are on a sort of soul control deck, which is honestly not the worst matchup for us. And we're just going to set a defender, pass back to them. They're going to attack in with the Battle Ox, and it is Aquamador, so they will take 3 from that. And they're just going to think about this for a bit. They're going to set one and pass back to us. We draw Monster Reborn, which is pretty nice. We could go for game here, potentially. Yeah, we could just go for a game. If we tribute summon out the Summon Skull, Raigeki away their board, Reborn another Skull, then if that set isn't Woboku, then we would just win. I think that's a bit greedy, though. And we do have Reborn and Dark Hole as well, so we can afford to, you know, sort of bide our time a little bit. We are going to try and cut their life points down by half, just Raigeking and chaining Ultimate Offering to it to bring out Summon Skull, attacking in for 2,500 there, and then just passing back to them. If they do have a way to deal with the Skull, you know, we've got Woboku, and next turn we can just Dark Hole their board away and Reborn something. So we're feeling pretty good about this board state. They're going to bring out a Battle Ox here, and they are going to Raigeki or Summon Skull, attack in with the Battle Ox. We've got Woboku for that, and it looks like they're just going to pass back to us. So we might as well just go for a game here. We've got Trap Hole as a bit of insulation. If they do, you know, manage to have Woboku and then clear or Summon Skull, and then try and summon out something. So I feel fine doing this. We're just going to Dark Hole away that Battle Ox. Reborn out a Worm Beast, actually. Okay, actually, this makes more sense, in my opinion. This is playing it a bit safer. This way, if they've got something like Reborn, it plays around that, as we can then tribute set the Worm Beast during their battle phase. And so this is just playing around Woboku even more. We're going to set the Trap Hole, add the Worm Beast back to hand, pass back to them, and they're just going to set one, pass back to us. We draw a Soul Exchange, which isn't the best right now, but it could be good for later. We're going to bring out Worm Beast, attack in for 1,400. They're going to activate Woboku. That's probably a sign that they didn't have Woboku set first thing, but I think it was still good to play around it as if they did. They're going to set another, pass back to us. We're going to bring out a Worm Beast. They're going to activate Trap Hole. We're just going to chain Offering because we do have the read that their first set was not a Woboku. And we're just going to try attacking in for game. And luckily, that will be the end of the game. Looks like that was just a reinforcements. So, you know, if we had gone all in earlier, we would have won earlier. But I think it was better just to play it a bit more safely. And we did. Game 2, I don't really think we make many changes to the deck here. I think our deck is pretty well matched against Soul Control. And so I feel pretty good about keeping it on this build. They might bring in some Trap Masters or things, which would be quite unfortunate, but I'm not the most worried about that, as we do only have one Ultimate Offering in the deck, so, you know, the Trap Masters might be more dead than otherwise. They're just going to bring out a Neo, pass back to us, so we're just going to summon out Login, attack into the Neo, get over it for 100. Main 2, we're just going to set all 3 spells and traps in our hand and pass back to them. They're going to bring out a Login, and we could Trap Hole this here. And I do think about it, but ultimately we say that's fine. Unfortunately, they do have a Fisher, so they will be able to attack in for 18 here, which is quite unfortunate. And they're just going to pass back to us. We draw Soul Exchange, which isn't quite useful here. So we're just going to set a Giant Soldier, pass back to them, and see what they do. They're just going to attack into the set, and since it's Giant Soldier, they can't get over it. So main 2, they're just going to set one of their own, pass back to us. We draw a Fisher, which is pretty good. And we could potentially Fisher that now, as it is very likely that they just have a set man-eater bug there. So we're going to think about this, and we are indeed going to Fisher. And we're going to actually get a bit aggressive, summoning out the Wicked Worm Beast here. We're also going to switch the Giant Soldier to attack, as we do have a trap hole to defend it. So we're going to attack in with the Giant Soldier first, and I think this is a bit of a mistake, as Wicked Worm Beast is the more priority target for them, because it's harder to deal with. So I think I should have attacked in with Wicked Worm Beast first. Yes, it would have made our board empty, but honestly, I think we're still early enough in the game where that's fine. But unfortunately, I attack this way, and they will pop the Wicked Worm Beast. They're going to Soul Exchange our Giant Soldier, summon out a Summon Skull, and since we don't really have a good way to deal with that, we're going to activate Trap Hole. And they're going to pass back to us. We draw a second Soul Exchange, which isn't quite useful here, given we don't have any Tribute monsters. And they're going to Reborn out that Summon Skull. This is quite unfortunate. They can get in for a lot of damage here. So we will take 2,500. They're going to set one, pass back to us. We draw Man-Eater Bug, which is pretty good. So we'll just set that Man-Eater Bug, pass back to them. Hope they don't have like a Raigeki or a Change of Heart here. They're going to bring out a Giant Soldier, and that is fine. And they do indeed have a Raigeki, so they will be able to attack in for potentially lethal, but luckily we do have the Wuboku to stop that. We draw Reborn, which is okay. We could potentially Reborn something like a Lodgin or Reborn our Wicked Worm Beast, but unfortunately we don't really have anything that can deal with the Summon Skull. So that's a bit unfortunate. We're just going to activate Sword of Revealing Light, set the Reborn, and pass back to them. They're going to Pot of Greed here, switch the Giant Soldier to defense, pass back to us. We draw Lodgin, which isn't very useful on this board. And they're just going to pass back to us, biding their time for the swords. We draw the third Soul Exchange with no Tribute monsters in hand. We're playing 5 Tribute monsters. Come on. Swords will expire. And we draw Trap Hole, which is just a little bit too late. We set the Lodgin to act as sort of some defense here, as they do have lethal on board otherwise. But it's not looking good for us. They will Change of Heart our Lodgin, and that is just the end of the game. So Game 2 kind of shows some of the deck's flaws. Just like any Soul Control deck, you can brick on Soul Exchanges or Tribute monsters. Soul Exchanges are, of course, worse to brick on, as they have less uses than a Tribute monster does. But, you know, it's just kind of unfortunate. We're playing 5 Tribute monsters to try to mitigate Soul Exchange bricking, but unfortunately, they can still brick nonetheless. So that's going to be Game 2, and yeah, nothing we can really do about that one. Let's just hope in Game 3 we don't brick that hard. So we will be going first here, and this is a pretty good opener. We do open with 2 Summon Skulls, and not really a good way to use them, but we do have Pot of Greed as well, drawing us into the 3rd Summon Skull. Kind of unfortunate, but we do have a Defender here to bide our time a little bit. They're going to bring out a Neo here, and they're just going to attack into our set here, and it is an Aquamator, so they will take 300. Main 2, they're just going to set one, pass back to us. We draw swords, which could be nice for later. We're just going to Tribute Summon out a Summon Skull. As you know, we've got 2 other copies in hand, so we might as well get aggressive here. They do have the Trap Hole for that, unfortunately, so we're just going to activate swords. We do have another in hand to replace it when it dies. And we draw Soul Exchange, so we could just use that. We're not actually going to, though. We're just going to set the bug, set the Soul Exchange, pass back to them. And we can just flip up the bug and tribute it off for a Summon Skull. We do have an additional Summon Skull in hand to pair with the Soul Exchange we have on field. So I feel okay about doing this and getting aggressive. Maybe this was a bit too greedy, as, you know, if I draw a Soul Exchange later, that could be dead because we've only got 1 skull. But I'm honestly feeling fine about this. We've got 2 more Tribute monsters in deck. And we're just going to fire that Raigeki, figuring that it's likely a Man-Eater bug, and it is. So we're just getting really aggressive here, dropping them down to 2,700 really early, and hopefully we can just keep that aggression going and potentially win the game. Unfortunately, they do have a Dark Hole, so they will be able to clear our Summon Skull. They're going to summon Neo, and we're going to think we do have a Trap Hole to deal with this potentially, but honestly, I think we're fine taking 1,700 points of damage and having a monster on field to Soul Exchange. They're going to attack in for 17, pass back to us. Wall is pretty good. So we could just set Wall, actually. That is a major consideration. We're just going to do that, actually. No need to commit the last Summon Skull to board here. They're going to Pot of Greed for 2 and just attack into our Wall. That wall will bounce their Neo back to hand, and they will take 150 from that. And they're just going to set one. We draw the second soul exchange, which, as I said, was a bit of a risk here. But we will just soul exchange their set and tribute set out this Summon Skull. They're just going to set one of their own and pass back to us. So, not the best, as that could be a Man-Eater bug. They've only used up one so far. It is a bit of a risk, but I think we can feel pretty safe here about just flipping up the Summon Skull, switching wall to attack, and just attacking in. And it looks like that is what we are going to do. We're just going to get as aggressive as possible, as they are at very, very low life points, and we do indeed have a trap hole. We attack in. They do have a Boku for that. We're going to think about this a little bit. We are actually going to Fisher away that Giant Soldier, as that Giant Soldier could potentially clear the wall, and we want to keep that on field. They've already used up a Dark Hole, so, this isn't as big of a risk as it would be otherwise. And we just got to hope that they don't have, like, a Raigeki. They're going to bring out Neo, we are going to trap hole that, and they're going to activate Fisher. So I'm very glad we played this the way that we did, as if we had lost our wall, they would have a way to remove the Summon Skull here. Unfortunately for them, they don't now, and we do draw an additional monster, so that will actually just be the end of the game. So I hope that this match sort of showed off some of both the strengths and weaknesses of this deck. It can be very controlling, and using Ultimate Offering, as we did in Game 1, can be very, very powerful. But it can really brick, especially when you just draw Soul Exchanges like in Game 2. I think this deck is sick enough and complex enough that I think it's worth showing off another game with it. So I actually have another match that I want to show off in this video. So let's dive into that now. Okay, we've got our second game again against Amp Allen TCG. This is one that we played immediately after the first one because, it was just a really good duel. So we want to keep the good games coming. So we will win the rock, paper, scissors, and we will be able to go first here. And this is an okay opener. Of course, not as good as our opener in Game 1. But we just set a defender, set Dark Hole and Wuboku, and pass back to them. And it looks like they've got a similar idea. They're just going to set 3 and pass as well. We could get aggressive here, and it looks like we are. We're just going to summon out a Wicked Worm Beast, as this is a pretty safe way to get aggressive. We're just going to attack into their set, see what it is. It's a Giant Soldier, which is perfectly fine. Wicked Worm Beast will pop back to hand. And they're just going to bring out a Neo. And they're just going to switch the Giant Soldier to attack to get aggressive here. They're going to attack into our set, and they do have reinforcements, so they will be able to clear it. And they're going to attack in for 13 there. We draw Ultimate Offering, which is incredibly good. So this means that we can summon Wicked Worm Beast and try and get over the Giant Soldier without really much fear. They are just going to let that go through, but they're going to think about it, which means that they likely have a Wuboku or a reinforcement set there. We're going to set the Ultimate Offering and just pass back to them. This can enable us to bring out a Man-Eater bug during their battle phase. And it looks like we are going to do that. So we're just going to set the Man-Eater bug from hand. They're going to debate whether to attack it or not. And it looks like they are not, which is probably smart, especially when they have a Raigeki in hand. So they will be able to clear our bug and keep that Neo around for a little bit longer. We're just going to pass back to them, as we do have Armed Ninja to bring out. I'm not sure if that's the best move, but, it's the move we're making. And we do get to at least confirm what their set is. And it is confirmed that it is a reinforcements. So they're just going to pass back to us, and we draw Soul Exchange, which we could potentially use here. It's a bit iffy, as, this does open up our Summon Skull to removal in the next turn, but it could be worth it. We could also just activate Swords and buy ourselves some more time, and it looks like that's what we're going to do instead. I think that's probably the smart move. We're going to gain a counter on Swords, and we draw Login, so we could just summon out Login and bait out the reinforcements, but I don't really think it's worth it, as we do know that reinforcements will deal with it. We draw a Monster Reborn, which makes going for the Soul Exchange play a lot more appetizing. So we are going to do that. Our set Summon Skull is protected from attacks since we do have swords up. They're going to bring out a Battle Ox, and that is fine by us. They're going to activate reinforcements, which is very interesting. I guess they're trying to play around Reaper a bit. And they're going to activate a Sword of their own. Oh, that would have been very clever, because if with swords they would be able to flip up Reaper and potentially make us snipe one of our own traps. Unfortunately for them, it was just a Summon Skull. So, they won't quite get to do that. But they have managed to flip it up, so, if they do have a Fisher next turn, they can deal with it that way, which is quite unfortunate for us. They're just going to set one, set another, pass back to us. We draw Soul Exchange, which could be pretty good for later, but unfortunately we don't have a tribute monster now, so it's a lot less useful here. We're going to Fisher away at that Battle Ox, as we don't really have too many good ways to protect ourselves during our opponent's battle phase. We could summon out a Lodgin in attack mode, but that's a bit risky if they've got like a trap hole or something. They're going to bring out a Lodgin of their own, and that's fine by us. They're going to flip up the Man-Eater Bug, and they're just going to try attacking in for 2250. We're going to think about this a bit, as we could bring out the Lodgin, potentially crash with theirs, but I don't really think it's worth it. So we're just going to take the whole 2250. We draw a Giant Soldier, which is a lot better, and now we will just Dark Hole their board away to clear the Lodgin. We're going to set the Giant Soldier, set this Soul Exchange here as a bluff, and pass back to them. They're just going to set one and pass, so we're feeling pretty good about this. We draw another Soul Exchange with, again, no tribute monsters to bring out. We're going to flip up the Giant Soldier, summon out Wicked Worm Beast that will get Trap Hold, but honestly, if they Trap Hole a Wicked Worm Beast, they're not Trap Holding like a tribute monster, so we're feeling pretty good about that. We're going to attack in for 13 and just pass back to them. They're going to bring out a Neo, and that is fine by us. It's a bit unfortunate here, as, you know, it will be able to clear our Giant Soldier. But we've got the Reborn to bring back a Summon Skull later, and Swords is very good here. We can just bide our time a little bit more. We're going to summon a Lodge, and they've got another Trap Hole for that, so quite unfortunate, but we can Reborn this Summon Skull here and attack in for 800. We're just going to pass back to them, as we do have this Waboku in a worst case scenario, but it's a bit risky. You know, they're going to set one, and we have the read that that's probably a Man-Eater Bug. So we could just attack into it and clear it, just get the 1-for-1 removal. But we are going to play a bit greedily here and activate the Soul Exchange. We do know that they've already used up a Raigeki, so it's less likely that they will have a Dark Hole. But this is still a bit greedy. If they do have the Dark Hole, we get majorly blown out here, and unfortunately they do. So I think this probably wasn't the best choice, especially when they reveal that they also have a Reborn here. They'll be able to attack in. Luckily, we do have the Waboku to protect ourselves, and they're just going to pass back to us. We draw Pot of Greed, so we can activate that. And we do have Fisher, so we'll just be able to Fisher away their monster. We're going to summon an Aqua Mator and attack in this way, I think because we have Swords to back it up. And we are just going to activate Swords, pass back to them. They're going to set one and just pass back to us, so we feel pretty good. We can just keep the offensive pressure going here. We're going to attack in for another 1200, set the Waboku, pass back to them. And they're going to bring out a Neo. That's fine by us. They can't attack in this turn. And so, yeah. We draw Change of Heart, which is actually really good. We could just get super aggressive here. Just Change of Hearting their Neo to get them down to 500. But it won't kill them, so I don't really feel the need to do that. And if they do have a Waboku, that would be really bad. They're going to Pot of Greed, drawing 2 more. They'll set one, pass back to us. We draw Fisher, so that's pretty good. We can just Fisher away their Neo. Switch the Aqua Mator to attack and attack in here for 12, dropping them down to 2200. They're in a very precarious position now. If they've got Waboku, then they're pretty insulated, but if they don't, we can just Change of Heart their monster and potentially go for lethal next turn. They're going to Fisher away the Aqua Mator here, set one of their own, pass back to us. And we got to think about what to do here. We're actually going to Change of Heart just to see what this is, and we are just going to flip it up and attack in here. I think maybe this is a bit of a mistake. I think maybe we should have gone for game with the wall, as if they do have Waboku, they're probably not going to use it now. They're probably just going to save it for when we actually do have lethal on board, and we do have a Waboku to protect the wall. But I think this is a bit of a misplay here, and let's see if it comes back to bite us. They will Change of Heart our wall, so they'll be able to flip that up, attack in. We do have Waboku, but they do have a Summon Skull to tribute off of the wall. We do have Man-Eater Bug, so that's pretty good, and they have used up Change of Heart, Raigeki, and Dark Hole. They could have a Soul Exchange in hand to bring in another monster with it, but I think just setting the Bug here is fine and preserving our life points a little bit. They're going to bring out a Battle Ox, and we will unfortunately be forced to target the Ox with our Man-Eater there, as otherwise we just lose the game. But it's not looking good for us. We have Wall of Illusion, which will, you know, preserve us if they don't have another monster. But, you know, that's a bit of an ask here. And luckily, it looks like they don't. So we just got to hope they don't have a Reinforcements. And unfortunately, they do. Looks like they didn't actually have Waboku. So we actually could have gone for game earlier with the Wall of Illusion. And that would have actually won us the game. But unfortunately, we misplayed a little bit. And that did cost us the game there. Sometimes you got to know when to get aggressive, even if you're playing a bit of a control deck. And unfortunately, we didn't quite know. We are going to go first, though, since we did lose that first game. And hopefully this one will go a bit better for us. We open with 3 tribute monsters in the opener, which isn't the best thing in the world. At least it's better than opening with 3 soul exchanges and no tributes. They're going to activate Pot of Greed, set 1 of their own, set 2 back row, set 3 back row, and pass back to us. We draw Soul Exchange, so we could go for it, and it looks like we are indeed going to go for it. I mean, this is like one of the only ways we actually have to advance our game state, so I think that this is fine. It's a bit iffy, as if they do have a board clear, they can just clear our entire board, but I think it's fine other than that. So we're just going to try to snipe one of their back row with Reaper here, and we're going to target the one closest to the deck. Unfortunately, that is a trap hole, so they can just chain it. And this is one of the major flaws with Reaper, is that, you know, if you do target a trap hole when you flip it up, then it can just be chained, and you can just lose the Reaper, which is very unfortunate. But nothing we can really do about that. We're just going to keep things as they are. They're going to flip up Man-Eater Bug, pop our Giant Soldier, and just summon out a Summon Skull. So we could Waboku this, but I think we're honestly fine taking 2,500. We'll save the Waboku for later turns. We draw another Waboku, though, so maybe we should have just fired the first one, because we did have a replacement here. We're just going to use the Man-Eater Bug to pop the Summon Skull. Luckily, they don't have a way to remove it. And they're just going to pass back to us. Trap Hole is pretty nice, especially as we don't really have any ways to deal with any monsters that they bring out other than the Trap Hole. So we will just use the Trap Hole in this Neo here. And we draw Monster Reborn, so we're just going to go for it. You know, reborning that Summon Skull. If they've got Wall of Illusion, this could come back to bite us, but I think we just got to get aggressive here. And so we're just going to pass back to them. They're going to Swords and just pass back to us. Nothing we can really do about that. We draw Dark Hole, so we're going to set it as a bluff here. And they're just going to pass back to us, so it looks like they might not have much removal here. We're going to set Swords, pass back to them. No real need to do anything on this game state here. They're going to bring out a Giant Soldier. That's fine by us. They do have a removal here, so they will be able to clear the Summon Skull and attack in with the Giant Soldier. Quite unfortunate. They'll set 1, pass back to us. Change of Heart is decent. We could just Change of Heart, taking their Giant Soldier and then tributing it off for like a Summon Skull or something. But since we can't attack this turn, we don't really feel the need to do that. We're just going to activate Swords of our own and pass back to them. They'll just switch the Giant Soldier to defense, pass back to us. We are going to go for the Change of Heart play here, attacking in directly. We could have set the Reaper here potentially, but given we have Swords up, I want to set the Summon Skull instead to potentially have a big beater next turn. Maybe this was a mistake, as Reaper could snipe a back row, but I want to just get aggressive. We've got another Summon Skull in hand, and we can always bring out the Reaper later when they've got less back row and more back row that might potentially be traps. We draw Man-Eater Bug, which is pretty good. They're going to flip up a Trap Hole, so they will be able to clear the Summon Skull. We'll just set the Man-Eater, pass back to them. They're going to stop defense, though, which will deal with the Man-Eater, so we did get a bit greedy there, potentially. And now Swords will expire. We're just going to set a Giant Soldier, pass back to them. And they're just going to bring out a Battle Ox, and we're fine with that. They're going to attack into our set here. It is Giant Soldier, so they will need reinforcements to clear it, and it looks like they might not have it. They're just going to Fisher away the Giant Soldier here and pass back to us. We draw a third Waboku, so, you know, we've got all the defensive options in the world. We're going to activate Swords here, and they're just going to set another pass back to us. We draw another Tribute Monster with no way to use it, so we're just going to pass back to them. And this is a flaw with the deck, is that, you know, you can brick on Tribute Monsters just like you can brick on Soul Exchanges. So hopefully we'll have some way to deal with this later. Unfortunately, we don't. We're just going to set a Wicked Worm Beast because we're desperate and we need Tribute Fodder on board to bring out like a Summon Skull or something. And the Swords will expire. We draw Trap Hole, which is pretty good. And we're going to think about what we want to do here. We could just set the Reaper instead of summoning out a Summon Skull, as Reaper will withstand their Battle Ox attack. And they've only used up 2 Trap Holes, so they might have a third one in that back row. I think we are just going to get aggressive here and summon out Summon Skull. If they do have the third Trap Hole, they've got the third Trap Hole. But it looks like they do not, so we're just going to attack in here. And they do have Waboku to prevent us from killing them there. Kind of unfortunate, means they probably have removal here. They're going to bring out another Battle Ox, and that is fine by us. They'll Fisher away the Summon Skull, and we will just use up a Woboku here, as we do have 2 more Wobokus in hand. Now, we could just Dark Hole the board away, summon out a Lodgin, and get in for damage. And that might indeed be what we do. We will indeed do that. We're just going to Dark Hole the board away, summon out that Lodgin, and just try and attack in. So we get in for 18. We'll send another Woboku, pass back to them. And they're going to bring out a Lodgin of their own. That's fine by us. We can honestly just use Woboku up here since we do have an additional Woboku in hand. So, unfortunately, they do have reinforcements, so they will be able to protect their Lodgin there. We draw a Trap Hole, and that's kind of unfortunate, as it's a bit too little too late in terms of removal. So maybe we should have actually just Trap Holed the Lodgin, as we don't really have a good way to clear it now. So if they do have removal here, that's kind of unfortunate. They're going to bring out the Aquamator, and we let that go through. And they do unfortunately have the Raigeki here. We are going to Woboku this, as this is a lot of damage. And they're just going to pass back to us. We draw a Fisher, which can clear the Aquamator, but again, I think we should have gotten a bit more aggressive with the Trap Hole there, as this would have cleared the Lodgin if we had just Trap Holed the Mator. Unfortunately, it's too little too late, and they will be able to attack in for 1800. They'll set one, pass back to us. We draw a Wall of Illusion, which is pretty nice. It will be able to bounce that Lodgin back to hand, which will enable us to Trap Hole it again. So they're going to attack in with the Lodgin. They do have reinforcements, so they will be able to get over our wall, and they're just going to set one and pass. We draw a Lodgin. We've got a bit of a dilemma here. We could summon out the Lodgin and try attacking into their set, which is probably not the Lodgin. But if they do have a Woboku here, and we attack into their set with the Lodgin, then our Trap Hole will be dead, as, you know, they'll just have a Lodgin on field. They likely will have removal for our Lodgin. So it's a bit risky here. And if they do have removal for the Lodgin, then, you know, we can't do this. So what we're actually going to do is we're actually going to set the Lodgin, set a Trap Hole, and just pass back to them. If they've got Maneater Bug, of course we get punished for this. But we would be losing our monster if they had Maneater Bug anyways. So I feel like this is the safer way to play it. They're going to flip up the Maneater Bug, pop our Lodgin there, get in for 450, pass back to us. And we draw a Maneater Bug of our own, so we're just going to set that, pass back to them. And they're going to bring out a Battle Ox, and I think that we should probably Trap Hole that, but we don't. Oh, we do. Yeah, okay. They just played a bit quickly. And this could potentially be the end of the game here. I think we honestly should have just flipped up the Maneater Bug, tributed over it for a Summon Skull, as they had used up 2 Trap Holes here. I guess they could have Woboku and then removal, so that's why we wanted to do it, but I think we're playing a bit too conservatively here. They do have Change of Heart, so they will be able to flip up the Maneater Bug and pop it, and unfortunately they do have a Neo to get in here. They do have a Trap Hole and a Woboku, so it wouldn't have mattered either way. But I think we probably should have gone a bit more aggressive here. But that shows that the deck can brick on tribute monsters as well. And maybe this is an argument for potentially decreasing the amount of soul exchanges and tribute monsters, as if you only draw one half of the deck, it can be really bad for you. But I think in a deck like this, which is just focused all on control, you actually do want to max out on tribute monsters and soul exchanges in order to have the most options possible. And also, I think you could probably play a slower game in most cases. I think if we had played these games a bit differently, maybe the outcome could have changed. But, you know, this is my first time really playing with the deck and trying it out. So this sort of thing will get easier with experience. But I think this deck is really cool. I highly encourage you to check it out if you haven't tried it out already. And I think that it could potentially be a major meta contender for the future. But I hope you enjoyed this video like always. Let me know down in the comments what you think of this deck, whether you think it will actually be a tier 1 deck in Yugi-Kaiba or not. And also let me know whether you'd like me to revisit these older formats that I've already covered more often. I've mainly just been charging ahead, you know, going deeper and deeper into Yu-Gi-Oh's history. You know, now I'm in treasure format and I've been focusing on that. But if people want me to make more videos on these older formats, I am happy to do so, as I think they're all really fun as well. But until next time, I've been Ben from YGO from Zero, and I'm signing off.